As we head into the weekend, the finish line in the 2016 election finally in sight. And I do say finally. Election day now just 51 days away. And in some portions of America, early voting is set to begin next week. Plus, the first debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is now just 10 days away. Typically on the show, we would run through a series of poll averages to show you where the race is and where the trends are. But tonight we decided let's take a different approach and focus on one specific poll and one pollster. In this case, the highly reputable Quinnipiac. Their latest national poll of likely voters shows Clinton up 5 points, 48 to 43, but that lead is half of what it was as recently as August 28th. And you add in the other candidates, and the race basically a tie within the margin of error, with Gary Johnson and Jill Stein together taking 17% of the vote. Now, the Q poll also points out two groups where Clinton is underperforming and where she'll need to do a lot better to fend off the challenge of one Donald Trump. First, independents, where Clinton trails by 5 points with only 5% of independent voters, in fact, undecided. Second, those millennials, a group that many people thought at the beginning of the season would be a strength going into the general. Instead, she leads, but she's only getting 31% of the millennial vote. Gary Johnson second among young voters. He's at 29. Trump sitting at 26. Now, for more on the Q poll and the state of the race in general, I spoke earlier today with Tim Malloy. Tim, the assistant director of the Quinnipiac University poll. You know, I look at your polls and tell me if I got the headlines pretty much right. Then in a 3-week span, in effect, Trump's cut Clinton's lead in half, if not even more, if you believe the momentum.
Actually, you're absolutely dead on that. She's lost 5 points without the other candidates involved, and it's down to just a couple. So she's had a bad swing in the last few weeks.
I know it's always popular to say, I wish we had better choices than what we have, but what struck me was from your poll, most voters, or those at least that you polled, they're voting against a candidate rather than for a candidate. Historically, Tim, is it always that way, or is it much more pronounced in 2016?
It is not always that way. This is a unique race from head to toe, as you know from the beginning. And we've never seen numbers like that. And that is the case. 66% of the people are voting less for Hillary than against Trump. And pretty darn near the same numbers when you look at the other candidates. So it's just negativity, and it's a shame.
You know, today, Tim, Bernie Sanders was in the Hudson Valley. He was campaigning with a congressional hopeful. He and Elizabeth Warren are going to try to basically convince a lot of the millennials, but also people that supported him in the primary, that she's the better option instead of going down a third candidate route, whether it's Dr. Stein or former Governor Johnson. How much are the third-party candidates, whether or not they get on the stage at Hofstra on the 26th, how much will they impact this race, do you think, from the polling you've done? And which way do they tend to break more, for Trump or for Hillary?
When Gary Johnson, in particular, is involved in the mix, it hurts Hillary a lot more than it hurts Trump. So the answer to the question is, he has a lot of younger supporters, as Bernie Sanders did, and you're right, they need to woo those people. Those are the people they need, and they don't have enough of.
Tim, when you look at the demos here in terms of by constituencies, give the number that jumped out to you that was surprising. I don't think it surprises anyone that African Americans will always tend to break with the Democratic candidate, no difference this time around. But in terms of either white men, white women, in terms of maybe the passion of the Latino electorate, which demo did you say, wow, that number was bigger than I thought?
The one that's loomed and we've seen as a red flag last few surveys we've done is the number of younger white women who are not necessarily supporting Hillary Clinton. We know who everybody's base is. We know that Trump has non-college educated white males. Hillary has the minority pretty much sewed up. But Hillary's weak spot right now is appealing to younger women and younger people in particular. You know, she's from a different era, as is Trump. But a lot of people who will be voting this time were not even born when the Clintons went into the White House.
I know you look at a lot of polls, obviously most focused on your own there with the Q poll, but when we look at the swing states, does it mirror what we're seeing on the national level? Because the numbers and the swing that I've seen in Ohio, to a degree Florida, but a couple of those states, it's been amazing in a couple of weeks just how much the numbers have changed.
Ohio has swung very badly against Hillary Clinton. She's maintained Pennsylvania. She was up 10 points a few weeks ago. Needs to hang on to that. But Ohio is an issue, and Florida is 50-50. So these swing states, North Carolina included, these are huge now, and that's why you're going to see them there a lot in the next few weeks.
And finally, Tim, before I leave you, at this point, with 50 some odd days left, if you look on the historical, and maybe we shouldn't because this has been such a screwy election season, but if you look at the historical, is the person this far out that's a leader, even with a marginal lead, traditionally the person who wins? Or if you're within the margin of error, it's anybody's bet?
I think the latter comment is right. And again, you know, as the real experts will remind us, most elections are close. So this is not an aberration. The whole thing has been an aberration, but where it stands right now, at least numbers-wise, is not all that strange. It's close. And the debates, the first one in particular, this is going to be the most important presidential debate possibly ever.
Absolutely. In a week and a half in our neck of the woods out there on Hofstra in Long Island. Tim Malloy, thank you again so much for the time.
Happy to do it.
And speaking of those debates, the Commission on Presidential Debates announced today that the only Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, only those two, will be invited to that first debate at Hofstra. Neither Libertarian Gary Johnson nor Green Party nominee Jill Stein have gotten to that 15% threshold needed to qualify. So for the first time, just those two people will be on the same stage. All right, coming up next, we'll pivot from national politics to an issue closer to home and to a goodbye. Bill Bratton, now the former NYPD commissioner, will look back at both his legacy, the challenges he faced, and the relationships with the two mayors under whom he served.